Do our conversations about crypto have you wanting to do more with your career? Check out Fidelity, which has been exploring Bitcoin and blockchain since 2014. They were the first traditional asset manager to launch a native crypto business and also among the first to launch a Bitcoin exchange-traded product. So why consider Fidelity? Because they invest in their talent with continuing education programs and they invest in their technology, ensuring associates are working with the latest and greatest so that their crypto teams can continue to improve and evolve their product, staying ahead of the rapidly changing digital asset landscape. With Fidelity's iterative, scalable approach, built to meet today's increasing demands across the digital space and a commitment to developing innovative tools, there's never been a more interesting time to work in crypto and DeFi at Fidelity. Explore Fidelity Crypto Careers today. Go to crypto.fidelitycareers.com to learn more. That's crypto.fidelitycareers.com. Fidelity is an equal opportunity employer. And now it is on with the show. My guest today is David Johnston. David is the lead technologist and code maintainer at Morpheus, a decentralized network of AI agents. We'll learn all about this today. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, Andy. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here, David. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It would be cool if you could please introduce yourself. Would love to hear a little bit of your personal and professional background. What have you been doing in the lead up to joining the team at Morpheus?
So I'm Bitcoin class of 2012. I was always an economics and technology nerd, so it sort of combined my two passions into one thing. After that, I helped with the launch of Ethereum, wrote one of the first papers sort of analyzing their crowd sale. And I guess probably most people know me for coining the term decentralized applications. So I wrote the framework for DApps back in October of 2013. And it's like, hey guys, let's use those great things about Bitcoin and build other projects with the same ethos, right? Open source, peer-to-peer, blockchain, and a token. And that really caught on as a framework. It was adopted by Ethereum and a bunch of others. And so, yeah, I've spent basically the last 10 years building each of the layers on top, whether it's the first, second layers or things like that. But I always had this passion for AI, but it felt like the technology wasn't quite there back in 2013, 2015, 2017. So when I saw sort of the maturity, the transformers and everything in 22, I was like, okay, now it's time to connect Web3 and crypto rails to AI. And so I started reading papers and writing about this concept of smart agents. Like, how do we do, with contracts, what became smart contracts? How do we do that for agents and make them into smart agents that can use Web3 and crypto? And then I read the Morpheus paper. It came out September 2nd of 2023. Today is actually the 2-year anniversary of the Morpheus white paper. And I read the paper and it kind of blew my mind. It was like, yes, we need a network like Bitcoin, but for AI, to give people a personal AI that they can control, right? Not your keys, not your agent kind of ethos. And so, yeah, I spent the last 2 years just contributing to the code, speaking at conferences about why I think decentralized intelligence is so important. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey, but that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, David. And yeah, I was just looking through your X profile, I guess, earlier this morning, and I saw about 2 hours ago that you did tweet that it was, in fact, here 2 years ago today that the, I guess, the Morpheus white paper was published. So, I mean, you've kind of given us a little bit of a sense of what Morpheus is, but just round that out, I guess, that, the high level vision of what Morpheus is, and maybe explain, who it's for, who are the kind of the end users of Morpheus.
Well, if Ethereum is a platform for smart contract developers, Morpheus is a platform for smart agent developers, right? And just like smart contracts, you needed some place where they could be hosted, where they could be validated, where you could have all these building blocks for smart contract builders that you weren't going to get on Bitcoin Rails or some other network that wasn't purpose-built to support smart contracts. And so Morpheus is the same thesis, just playing out again in the case of smart agents. And like, what does every agent builder need? Well, they need inference, right? Somebody has to run the large language models and actually, host them and provide, responses to those prompts. And so one of the first things Morpheus proposed was, hey, there should be a marketplace for inference. Anybody should be able to run a GPU and provide it for users so that it's always available, right? Not through some big company, not through some centralized organization, but distributed globally, right? And so that's maybe the first big piece. And the second one is, how do I control my agent? Well, I want to literally use my wallet. I want to use my Web3 credentials to be able to own my AI the same way I own my Bitcoin or I control my assets on chain with Ethereum. Is I want to do that for my intelligence, right? So I use a lot of different agents, but I want to control where are the outputs flowing, right? Where are the prompts stored? Where's the context that is building up, my personal intelligence? I want to own that. I want to own that on chain, and I always want to have access to it forever. So I would say anybody building smart agents. So a bunch of great ecosystems have popped up, right? You have Think, you have Theoric, on the compute side, you have Akash, you have Venice, right? All these groups are providing the piece of that puzzle, right? But if you bring them all together, at the end of the day, I just want an environment that handles everything for me, right? The coders don't want to run the hardware. They don't want to have to handle the payments or do all these pieces individually. They want one solution. So that's sort of Morpheus, is this platform to bring those different pieces together.
Yeah, and look, let's just dig into that a little bit then, David, in terms of, you're literally wearing the T-shirt. It says, decentralized AI, right? So people can understand that is what we're talking about here. But just, you have done this a bit, but just, again, make the distinction why it is critical that we have the ability to have, essentially different forms, different models, different agent structures that represent what we can understand as decentralized AI versus perhaps what, someone like, OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever those, wonderful companies doing amazing things. But there's kind of you do get the sense that there's potentially not so much a battle, but there are different strands building here, aren't there, David?
Well, first of all, it's important to keep in mind why the internet won over intranets, right? Because the thing that was jurisdiction agnostic and could serve anybody usually wins, right? And that tends to be open source and it tends to be permissionless. Like if you're sitting in China today, you don't have access to ChatGPT, right? They've banned ChatGPT just like they banned Facebook and Google and most other Western products. So what are the Chinese using? They're using open source, right? It's not by accident that DeepSeek and these other models that have come out of China are open source because that's what they can access, right? And so, if you want to build something that's for all 8 billion people, it has to have this open permissionless nature, right? So let's take the example, of a great project built on Morpheus like Venice, right? They created an open source based models for a private version of ChatGPT that stores it all on your local device, right? It's not stored on some other server. And where did it go viral? It went viral in South America because there wasn't a cost barrier. You could use the app for free. You could instantly use it without sort of a lot of limitations. And the guy in South America might not have $1,000 a year he wants to pay to some big company to get the latest and greatest model. He might be perfectly happy using the open source. And the open source models have really caught up. But 2 years ago, they were way behind, but they're right at the edge of sort of matching the capabilities of a ChatGPT 4 or whatever benchmark you want to look at. Because it's free, because it's permissionless, because it's global by nature, I think decentralized AI will actually be the majority of adoption. Just the way Android is the majority of phone adoption. Because anybody who wanted to charge for an operating system license priced themselves out of the $50 Android phone or the $100 Android phone. And you have to keep in mind, that's the average person. Globally, the median person has a $158 Android phone. And that's, if you want to be mass market, it's not iPhone users paying, $2,000. It's the guy that just wants to get in the door and go from 0 to 1. Right. So for me, it's about that universal access, right? And that's, if you look at the history of crypto, that's what we see. 80% of the users are in the developing world. Top adoption is India, China, Nigeria, Brazil, Indonesia. There's not a European country in the top 10. Like we've got lots of ways to pay for things and store wealth and buy in the stock market. But imagine being the guy in Nigeria and you've got a smartphone, but you can't access finance, right? And that's the first country in the world to hit 50% crypto adoption, right? So I would say the same thing's going to play out with AI is the lowest cost, the freest option is going to win the most adoption.
I love it. At Morpheus, you talk about my super agents, or my super agent, your crypto companion agents, right? And I suppose in the early, phase of all this, these are more designed to help, people across the crypto ecosystem. Let's just say with, crypto-related tasks, and I'm sure over time that would evolve. But yeah, so just to dig into a little bit about what the crypto companion agents can do, who they're for, and what that kind of stuff.
Well, it's natural that, coming from Web3 and connecting my AI to a wallet, I want it to send payments. I want it to do DeFi for me. I actually think that's one of the big selling points here is AI is going to make crypto accessible to everybody else, right? Because all of a sudden I don't have to know how the smart contract works. I don't have to understand all these technicalities. I can just use the technology, right? I type what I want to accomplish. It goes and does it for me, right? And I don't have to understand oracles or, how the tech stack works. If you don't know the database their app uses, they don't care, right? At the end of the day, it's real utility to users. It's what moves the needle. But I think most people, they're going to use this for all the same things that they use chat apps and image generators for today, right? And so I think, we don't want crypto and AI just to be a niche around, DeFi or payments, but to really serve these mass market use cases. Again, to give credit to Venice, they've created an app that you don't have to know anything about crypto. You don't have to know it uses crypto. You don't understand that the GPUs are distributed. It's just beautiful and easily to use. And they've crossed their first million users, right? And that was launched out of the Morpheus community, right? Their first few thousand users were people in Morpheus staking their tokens to access a pro account and bootstrap the whole network up, right? So that's what we're seeing is these agent builders, these app builders that need the inference or they want to provide something on top. That's what Morpheus is designed to support, right? And maybe a cool note here is Morpheus is not a company. There's no foundation. There's no entity. There's not even a DAO. It's entirely built as smart contracts that anybody can use and that run on chain, right? And so what that means is everybody's free to build on it the way that they want to build on it, right? If a developer just wants to use the inference, great. If they want to do, some sort of fundraising for their agent, they can launch a subnet, people can stake towards them. Great. Like it's all modular, right? It doesn't force you into, using the lowest common denominator. You can pick and choose the model or the agent or the tool that you want to grab. And that's ultimately the idea of having a personal AI is I should be able to make all those choices. And I think that's really important to understand.
Yeah, well, let's just to dig into that a little bit, David. I guess you're talking about effectively you're talking about governance, and you guys describe it as atomic governance, right? But it certainly, as you've identified, is different from typical Web3 governance models like DAOs, which the kind of the idea or ethos behind DAOs. Very cool, but in practice, it's been a little bit more difficult to make it work the way it should, just because of the complexities of, really comes down to the complexities of humans sometimes, doesn't it? But just that aside, just explain what you mean by atomic governance and how you kind of hope to kind of solve some of those frustrations, I suppose.
So if you want to remove bureaucracy, if you want to remove central points of failure, and committees and all these things that DAOs can devolve into, is you have to keep the individual at the heart. They need to be able to make these choices and not have to take a vote to get somebody's permission to do X, Y, Z, right? So the whole idea of atomic governance is the individual can make all the choices in Morpheus, right? And this started with the fair launch. This started with the way capital was contributed. Instead of doing a token sale, the Morpheus proposal was, hey guys, we're all holding Ethereum. let's stake it towards the protocol and just direct in the yield that comes from the Ethereum validation reward, right? That 3% a year that you get from Lido for staking your ETH. Let's direct that into the protocol. And what are we going to do with it? We're going to take all of it and buy the tokens out of the pool. So there's no treasury. There's nobody holding anybody else's money. You've got custody of your own ETH and you can withdraw it whenever you want, right? So it's like, I'm going to hold ETH anyway. I might as well support a cool open source project, right? And so that put individuals at the heart of deciding, how to support it, when to support it, in the way that they wanted, and didn't create some sort of original sin of a big pot of money being held by a small number of people, right? And so in the absence of that, it's been amazing. Over $3 billion worth of Ethereum have flowed through the smart contracts at this point. That's thousands of people depositing their ETH, directing the yield to support the open source, and then withdrawing their ETH if they want. And so what's cool is we're getting to the second version of that. And one of the big things the community has wanted is multiple forms of yield. And so what we're opening up, just completed audits. The community did a big bug bounty and public testing the smart contracts. But we're getting to the point where it's going to go live and you're going to be able to take, not only staked Ethereum, but wrapped Bitcoin and USDC and USDT, these major stables, and be able to provide the yield from those. And so we're talking about in the next week, that's going to go live. And that's sort of going to wrap up this first 2 years where the community wanted multiple yield sources. That'll be delivered. It's got all the inference delivered. All the pieces that were imagined in the white paper have now been coded and shipped. And that's really cool because what you're doing is you're removing some of the last single points of failure, right? Right now, Morpheus is dependent on Lido, right? That was the only way to provide yield in the protocol. But by opening it up to another platform and more sources of yield, it becomes a lot more robust. So I'm just really excited about that because for these platforms to be powerful, they need to be decentralized. They need to be really robust and they need to have a bunch of options and just let people decide.
Got it. Thank you, David. All right. Well, look, as we start to finish up this part of the podcast, David, for any, developers or people listening that you think might be interested in playing around with what you guys are building at Morpheus, and look, anything else that people need to know about the Morpheus token, MOR or more, just tell people what they need to go and where they can go to learn more and start to dig into what you guys are doing.
So there's a bunch of community websites, but one of the ones I help maintain is more.org. So that's MOR.org. And ton of information on there. You can see the GitHub, the Discord, all the channels where the community discusses everything. There's dashboards for, staking your ETH, but also staking towards builder projects. If you're a developer, openbeta.more.org, you can get a free key right now to set up your large language model and power your agent. And that's being all, again, funded by people staking more to support the agent builders. So, there's so many tools, but go to more.org. You can follow X, Morpheus AIs is the X handle, but there's a ton of information about there. On the tokenomics side, it's actually very simple. There's only 42 million tokens, more tokens that will ever exist. They're issued a little bit more every day, and the inflation rate goes down a little bit every day over a 16-year curve. So you get to the end of the 16 years and all the tokens will exist. And there's a burning mechanism, so it'll be something less than 42 million in circulation. So the more the protocol is used and the capital buys those tokens out of the pool, the more it reduces the supply over time. And then finally, there's this brilliant recycling mechanism where half of those tokens that get bought return as the block reward in 16 years. So you can, for the next 1,000 years, be funding people and rewarding them for providing compute and inference for models, and never run out of the block reward, but without breaking that 42 million cap. So I like scarcity and tokenomics. I like long-term projects. Don't just, emit all the tokens in a week or a year, but have a plan for like, how do you support the growth of the community for a
Very well said. Thank you, David. And look, the links to Morpheus are in the show notes. People, let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off with the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. And we are back. And David, it is time to finish off the show. Of course, we do that by running you through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
I'm up for it. Let's go.
Excellent, David. I'm just going to run some questions at you, and I just want you to give me your honest answers, kind of hot take style, if you like. Be fascinating to see what you have to say. Question one for you, David, is very simply, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I am a freedom maximalist, and I will use whichever tool will maximize human freedom. Bitcoin is great. Ethereum is great. Morpheus is great. And they all have different uses.
I love it. Yeah, very pragmatic answer. I like that. Look, David, you coined the term DApps or decentralized applications, way back in 2013. Just, I guess, hot take style, but what's your honest assessment of how that concept has evolved, now, I guess, 12 years later?
It was amazing to see people sort of run with the idea. It's definitely come to accurately describe something that's truly decentralized on a blockchain. And that was my hope, is it wouldn't just be, decentralized in name only, right? And people that really fulfilled those 4 tests of it had to be open source and peer-to-peer and on a blockchain and have its own token was sort of the real breakthrough, in my opinion, of Satoshi, was figuring out how software could pay for its own hardware. And once you realize how that removes all the middlemen, all the, trusted intermediaries from the system, that's why eventually everybody got to, oh, I need a token for persistence to pay for the hardware, to give people sort of this neutral infrastructure that isn't owned by one guy cutting a check, right? And keeping a server run. So, yeah, I'm amazed by what people have done and built with DApps the last 12 years.
Yeah, no, that's a great line, how software can learn to pay for its own hardware. Very good. Thank you, David. What about this? Can you think of any kind of, a sacred cow or kind of a widely accepted opinion, maybe in either AI or crypto, that you think perhaps is people are getting completely wrong and is overdue to be disrupted?
People have this misconception that the big AI companies have all the GPUs. It's not true. When Ethereum was still proof of work, the number of GPUs that were mining ETH is 50 times as many as trained ChatGPT-4. If you give people an incentive, they will bring all the compute and inference and GPUs that you need. And we, the crowd, right, the global community, are so much bigger than any one company. So don't buy this lie that, they've got it all figured out and they've got all the experts and they've got all the compute. It's not true, right? Open source keeps proving that the crowd and the global community is much bigger than any one walled garden.
I love it. David, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. As someone who's been in crypto for much longer than 10 years, you understand that very well. But look, I guess Morpheus, decentralized AI, 10 years down the line, what does that look like?
Well, if you'd asked me 10 years ago what smart contracts would look like, I would say smart contracts are eating the world. Right? Because they're so much more efficient than the old, legal contracts on paper. And here we are again at sort of the same kind of moment. And I would say smart agents are going to eat the world. They're so much faster. They're so much more efficient. And if I own the agent and it's working on my behalf 24/7, 365, and the benefit is flowing to me, then that's a great outcome, right? The bad outcome is if you don't own the agent and the benefit is flowing to some company or some government. And so for the same reason people own a smartphone is they want to be able to carry all that knowledge and context and their memories and everything with them. People are going to end up universally presuming they've got a smart agent that represents them and as a fiduciary to them. So that's the big thing for me. In 10 years, I think agents will be doing the vast majority of transactions and they'll be acting, but it'll look similar to today because they're each individual actors, right? Bidding and trying to find value and buy things for us and all the rest. But I think agents will be the new apps, right? That's going to be the interface that we're all using. Blockchain is a beautiful back end, but AI is a beautiful front end.
I love it. All right. Another way of thinking about this, David, is it's a wonderful quote you'll be very aware of by William Gibson, who, of course, said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Now, with that in mind, David, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
I just go back to agents, right? The speed at which you can work and accomplish things, it's a multiplying force. And so I was teaching my nephew how to build a website and I showed him an agent that could help him do it. And in less than an hour, coded the website, got it all set up and hosted and deployed it to a domain name and added an AI element using a Morpheus key and all for free. Right. And I remember the 90s. I remember the 2000s. It used to cost $500,000 and, a dozen engineers, and you'd have to host your own servers. So we've come so far, and agents are just going to accelerate that. So as people see the benefit in their lives practically, that's what's going to get them excited. And they're going to end up leaning in and doing more and more things through an agent, right? And there'll be agents for everything. But I want my agent to act on my behalf and honestly communicate with those agents, work with those agents to get things done, right? Imagine your agent working when you're on vacation, when you're sleeping, right? When you're on enjoy weekend, right? I think we're going to come to expect that world. Just like now I can send crypto 24/7. The bank still closes at 5 p.m. They're still, are the servers tired? Like the bank is still running this 1950s model, right? And just like crypto is dragging it into the 21st century, I think smart agents are going to do the same for AI.
I love it. And it brings us nicely to the final question, David, which is very simply, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
I got to give it to Robert Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and it has an AI theme and talks about space settling and colonization, which is a big passion of mine. And sort of imagines this this new world all the way back I think he wrote it in the 1950s, early 60s, and so really ahead of his time. But those concepts of freedom and how we extend them, I think very close to the heart for a lot of us.
Fantastic. And that brings us nicely to the end of the show. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us today, David. This was super fun. Again, just to close it out, again, please direct people to the Morpheus website and shout out your X handle, anything like that.
Sure. MOR.org, more.org is one of the community websites. Got a ton of information about there on Morpheus. And then D Johnston EC is my handle on X. So yeah, follow me on there. I'm usually talking about technology or economics or freedom or some combination of the three.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. All the best and bye for now.
Thanks, Andy.